Hey friends, Ron here, and welcome to Let's Recovery. All right, I'm glad you're here tonight. If you're new, we get together here every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about recovery. Various topics. Once a month, we have a guest, and I'm going to be here by myself tonight, but I'm glad you're here tonight. If you're watching live, I'd like you to drop a quick hello in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. If you're watching on the replay, then go ahead in the chat on the replay and comment replay and let me know where you're checking in from. I love seeing who's catching up later in the week. We generally have people in and out here during the live, some comments here. And then we have a large group of people that jump in during the week to join into the discussion. And I'd like to know where you're checking in from. And if you have any questions or comments, throw those in there. I want to know what you're thinking about. Now, tonight, we're going to be talking about something foundational. We're going to talk this evening about what recovery really means. So, if you've been in recovery for a while, I know that you've heard that word recovery hundreds of times. But the question is, what does it actually mean? It seems like I hear people throw that word around a lot, and there'll be different meanings, or it'll be really clear that the person using the word doesn't have any idea what the meaning is, or they see it as some big general term. And so, what does recovery actually mean? Is that term recovery? Is that just about staying sober, or is it something deeper? Is there something deeper than staying sober that we're chasing? Something deeper that's going on, something more about things like healing or purpose or becoming whole again. And I think that my experience has been recovery is a lot more than staying sober. So, excuse me. Where we're going to begin tonight, for a long time, I thought that recovery and sobriety were the same thing. If I wasn't using, if I wasn't acting out, that meant that I was in recovery. Here's the problem that I had with that. I went through periods of time where I wasn't using, where I wasn't acting out, but I found that I was still a very angry person. I was still very disconnected. And I was still running from my emotions, avoiding my emotions and my feelings at all costs. And I'll just say it, that is not recovery, not recovery. What that is survival. And that's what most of us have been chasing in our addiction, is survival. We've been trying to hide and run from emotions and from pain, from things that made us uncomfortable, that made us afraid, in an attempt to survive. And I don't want just to survive. Sobriety is about stopping a behavior. Recovery, on the other hand, is about healing the person who needed that behavior in the first place. Recovery means learning to sit with our feelings instead of running from them. It means facing our stories. And all of us have a story. All of us have a history and a past. It means facing our stories and not just the highlight reels, not just those few high points when we were in high school or in college or that one little spell where everything seemed to be going well. We're not interested in just talking about and facing the highlight reels. Recovery is learning how to face the pain and the truth that's present there in our lives too. Now, I've got a question for you. I'm going to be asking some questions tonight. And when I ask questions, if you're here, feel free to shoot your response in the comments. I want to know what you're thinking. So here's my first question for you tonight. If you had to describe recovery in one word, what would that word be? Drop that in the comments and let me know what you're thinking there. You'll have to excuse me. I've been congested lately, and I did my last mowing of the yard. I've got a big yard, several acres. Did my last mowing today, throwing up dust and all kinds of stuff. And so my throat's a little rough tonight. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at 4 dimensions of recovery. I'm going to break it down into 4 parts because real recovery touches every area of our life. So what are those 4 dimensions of recovery? Well, it begins, number 1, with physical recovery, restoring our bodies. Recovery is healing, Blas. Recovery is healing. That's a good word. That's a good word. So the area of physical recovery, restoring the body, that's going to cover things like sleep, nutrition, movement, rest. In recovery, we learn to treat our body with care. And we remind ourselves that we're worth caring for. Now, most of us that have struggled with addiction, with unhealthy compulsive behaviors, most of us have struggled physically. We have developed in my addiction. I had been for years, I'd been borderline diabetic. And in my addiction, that diabetes kicked in and did a number on me. And a part of that physical recovery for me was learning how to manage that. Another area in my time of addiction was, you all can't tell because of my beard and mustache, but it did a number on my teeth. And I'm actually right now in the process of getting all that taken care of. But physical recovery, learning to treat our body with care, and learning to understand and to believe that we are worth caring for. A second dimension of recovery is emotional recovery. It's learning to name and manage our emotions and our feelings. One of the things that we're running from in our addiction is we run from feelings. We run in our addiction, we run from pain, we run from sadness, we run from loneliness, we run from shame or guilt, and we turn to our substance of choice in an attempt to shut those feelings and those emotions down. Things like anger, sadness, fear. A lot of us grew up hearing things like anger is always bad. Or men, I can't speak for women. If there's a woman here tonight, feel free to jump into the comments here. But I know for men, we're taught that fear is weakness and that we shouldn't ever be afraid. But I got to tell you, there are times that if we don't experience fear, what we're demonstrating is ignorance. There are times when we should be afraid. Fear is a natural feeling. It's something that's there. Our feelings are not the enemy. That's what many of us have learned and have believed. Our feelings are signals. Our feelings, I believe, were created by God, and that all of our feelings have a gift that's available for us if we're able to press into those feelings, process those feelings in a healthy way. I've shared a story before, but I'm going to share it again tonight. Growing up in a family with an alcoholic father, one of the coping mechanisms that I learned as a very young child was to shut down emotionally. Just don't feel, don't care. If I don't feel, if I don't care, I can't be hurt. That was my line of thought. And so I just began to shut down emotionally. And I began to keep people at arm's length, wanted to keep distance between myself and other people so that I wouldn't be hurt. And in my 20s, right after coming back here to Southern Indiana from college, being at college down in Tennessee, I was dating a young lady, and we had gone out some, and she was convinced that we were going to be married. And man, I just wasn't interested in that at all, not with her. And I ended up breaking up with her. And I can still remember when I broke up with her, I remember her screaming in my face, "Do you know what your problem is? You've got all the emotion of a rock." And I burst out laughing right in her face. I burst out laughing because what I was thinking was, I must be doing it right. That's what I'm shooting for. I don't want to feel emotion. I don't want to feel anything. I must be doing it right. But what I was doing is I was becoming a cold, bitter, hard person. And so we learn to reconnect with our feelings and with our emotions. We learn to recognize what we're feeling, and we learn to press into those emotions and to grow with those emotions. The third dimension of recovery is relational recovery. It's the idea of rebuilding trust and connection. In our addiction, many of us have hurt others. But that's not just the extent of it. We also have been hurt. We have hurt others, but we have been hurt. We have been harmed. In recovery, a part of recovery means learning what safe connection and safe community looks like again. Now, there was a period when I thought about relational recovery, rebuilding trust and connection, I thought completely in terms of me becoming a person that other people can trust again. And that is an important thing. That's an important step. For years, I wasn't a person that could be trusted. And that led to a divorce. And even after my divorce with my children, I have 4 daughters. And I was not trustworthy there. I was disconnected emotionally. Um, was not attuned to their needs and to what was happening, what was taking place in their life. And then when I was at my lowest, at my worst in my addiction, I ended up being arrested and went to prison for 2 years. Big time failure with my daughters. My oldest daughter at the time was a freshman in college. My other three daughters were still in high school. And all of a sudden, I was gone out of the picture for 2 years. And so, in that situation, relational recovery involves the hurt and the harm that I've caused and being able to reestablish relationships and show that I can be trusted and that I can be present. But that's only half of the picture. The other half of relational recovery comes in the areas where we've been hurt. And man, I would say probably all of us that are in recovery have been hurt in real deep ways, whether it's through our families, our primary caregivers, our families, mother and father, brothers and sisters, um, or other relationships. We have experienced harm. Most of us have learned from a few people that those people aren't trustworthy and can't be trusted. And what we do as we enter into addiction is we expand that from that person that harmed me can't be trusted to nobody can be trusted. And we begin to believe and live as if we can only trust ourselves. We don't want to connect with anybody else. Recovery for us means learning what safe connection looks like, what it looks like for us to be safe and to be trusted, but also we learn what safe community looks like. We were designed for community. Stop and think about it. Isolation is never a healthy thing. And yet isolation is what we tend to run to in our addiction. And so, how do we rebuild safe community? How do we find people and learn to interact with people again where we are able to trust them? A therapist, I heard a therapist say once, she was talking about the importance of intimacy. And she began by explaining, first of all, that we've been lied to, that most of us, at least men, again, I'm speaking for men. There's a woman here, feel free to jump into the comments and let me know that it's the same way for you or that it's totally different. I wouldn't begin to pretend that I understand really very well what women think. But what men learn, when we hear that word intimacy, we automatically connect that word with sex. But I had a therapist explain to me, and it took a while for me to get it beat into my head. Intimacy doesn't really have anything to do with sex. Intimacy is about connection and community. It's about safe community. And the definition that she used, that this therapist used for intimacy, she said intimacy is connection. It's relationship where I want to be with you, you want to be with me, and there's no fear of shame, no fear of judgment. And I got to be honest with you, when she explained that to me, I had never heard that before, but I don't know that I'd ever experienced it either. If I had, it was far enough back I didn't remember it. And beginning to learn how to make connection like that. And I've been in recovery for a long time now. And what I can say is that that kind of connection is a key to my recovery today and to my healthy life. So relational recovery. And then the fourth dimension of recovery is spiritual recovery, rediscovering purpose and meaning. Whatever your faith, whatever your belief, there's a spiritual side to healing. The part that says my life has value and I'm not beyond redemption. Bill W. and AA call this a vital spiritual experience. And Bill W. taught that it was one of the three legs of recovery and that it was essential. This vital spiritual experience was essential to recovery. And I believe that to be true. I believe that that fourth dimension of recovery is spiritual recovery. And so I want to put in a little plug here for a minute about our live next Tuesday. Normally, I have guests with me on the third Tuesday of the month. But in November and December, the schedule may be off a little bit. It is going to be off a little here in November. Normally, my guests are the third Tuesday. But here in November, because of scheduling, my guest is going to be next Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month. So a week from tonight, I will have a guest. My guest will be Rob Shetler. Rob and I have known each other since the 80s. For a lot of you that are watching this, that's probably before you were born. But Rob and I met in the mid-80s. We actually met working together at a treatment facility. And Rob was coming from addiction then. And man, I had read a book about addiction and was supposed to be an expert. And it was before I even recognized that I was struggling with addiction. But we met in the mid-80s and have been friends now for over 40 years. And Rob will be here with me next week. Rob has a business, Pastoral Care for You. I'd encourage you to check out his website if you'd like to, Pastoral Care, the number 4 and the letter U, pastoralcareforyou.com. And Rob is going to be speaking about the spiritual side. We're going to have a discussion about the spiritual side of recovery. Rob has a master's in pastoral care and counseling. He has served as a pastor. Rob is a board certified chaplain and a certified spiritual director with something like 24 years experience working as a hospice and hospital chaplain, as well as pastoring. And like I said, we met back in the 80s working for a recovery facility. And Rob continues to work today with men and women that are in recovery. And Rob will be my guest next Tuesday to talk about the spiritual side of recovery. So, 4 areas, 4 dimensions of recovery: physical recovery, emotional recovery, relational recovery, and spiritual recovery. So here's my next question for you. If you're here, put a comment in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, answer this in the comments there, and I'll be checking that out. But which one of these 4 areas, physical, emotional, relational, or spiritual? Which one of these 4 areas feels the strongest for you right now? Which area would you say you're doing the best in? I think this is something that I'm doing. Maybe I'm not doing it well, but I'm doing it this area better than I have ever done before. And then the second part of that question is, which one of these 4 areas needs the most attention? Speaking for myself, I'll answer. I'm asking you to answer. I feel like emotional recovery, man, I've come a long way there. I still have a long way to go, but I've come a long way in opening up to my emotions, being able to recognize what I'm feeling, and press into that and process that in a healthy way. I'm still working. I'm still struggling some with physical recovery. I told you I'm getting my teeth worked on now and getting some things taken care of there. But also just physical health is something that I'm still really working on and really dealing with. So now there are, excuse me, there are some big misunderstandings about recovery. Excuse me. Big misunderstandings about recovery. And I want to take a look at a few of those for a few minutes. So myth number 1, I've got 3 that we're going to look at. Myth number 1 about recovery says recovery is about willpower. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever thought that? I just need more willpower. I need more commitment. I need to work harder. Recovery, myth number 1, recovery is about willpower. And I would argue that no, it's not. Real recovery is about community. It's about reconnecting and building healthy community. And again, I've talked before about a video. I would encourage you, when you get a chance, go to YouTube, Google or search on YouTube, what if everything we know about recovery is false? It'll kick up a TED Talk. Johann Hari is the speaker. And in that TED Talk, he walks through addiction in his family. He talks a little bit about how other countries are addressing addiction. And then he turns to a study that took place in Canada called Rat Park. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that today, but you need to watch that video. Rat Park, the video, it's a TED Talk on YouTube, Johann Hari, what if everything we know about addiction is false? And that study in Canada spoke to the importance of healthy community. And in fact, at the end of that TED Talk, Johann makes a statement. He says the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is healthy community. And that's become a catchphrase in the community world over the last several years. And willpower can get us started in recovery, but connection or community, healthy community, that safe place, going back to that definition of the word intimacy. Healthy community where I want to be with you, you want to be with me, and there's no fear of judgment and no fear of shame. It's healthy relationship, that kind of healthy relationship that that provides that framework for us to experience recovery. Years ago, there was a guy that I worked with, and he had struggled for years with an alcohol problem, and had at one point in his life, he used to really give anybody that had been to treatment, or anybody that was involved in groups like AA or NA, anything like that. He used to always give those of us that were in programs like that a hard way to go. And he would go off, and he'd talk down to it, say, I was drunk for years, and I haven't had a drink in years. And I didn't have to go through treatment. I didn't have to go to meetings. It was just willpower. And man, I've been sober for years. And again, it goes back to what we're talking about tonight. He was sober. He wasn't drinking, but he wasn't in recovery. And he had become what you've maybe heard referred to as a dry drunk. He had quit drinking, but as he got sober, without community, without help, without work, all based on willpower, he became extremely angry. He became more and more violent, more and more hostile. He had been married for years. When he got sober, his wife divorced him because he became abusive. He's began to become more verbally abusive, physically abusive. And at this point in his life, when I knew him, his kids were grown and they didn't have anything to do with him. He didn't have friends. He didn't drink, but he was not experiencing recovery. He had built it all with willpower. So myth number one, recovery is about willpower. It's not. Recovery is about healthy community. If you got thoughts on that, stick them in the comments. I want to know what you're thinking here. Myth number two, recovery ends when the behavior stops. I remember, man, I believed that for years. As soon as I can get it under control, recovery will be over. I won't have to do these things anymore. Recovery ends when the behavior stops. It's another myth. It's not true. Recovery is a lifelong journey. Recovery is a daily practice of growth and honesty. When I first started attending meetings, it was right out of prison. I was on parole, and meetings were a condition of my parole. I had to go to meetings. Thanks, Vlass. I had to go to meetings, or my parole officer would violate me and I'd head back to prison. I had 8 years hanging over my head. I didn't want to go back to prison for 8 years, so I went to meetings. But I wasn't happy about being in meetings. And I couldn't wait until parole was over and I didn't have to go to the meetings anymore. And when parole was over, I immediately quit going to meetings. And man, I had been experiencing sobriety, but I even began to struggle in that area of sobriety. And I had to reconnect. I had to find healthy community. Today, I've been in recovery for about 15 years. And I still attend meetings. I was in a meeting last night, my Monday night home group. And I was in a meeting last night. It was about a dozen guys. We meet every Monday. And I got to tell you, it's the highlight of my week. Early on, when I first started, there was a period when I attended meetings where I went to meetings because I was forced to. There was a period in my life where I went to meetings because I was afraid if I didn't, I'd relapse. For years now, I go to meetings because that's where my family's at. That's where my friends are. That's my safe place where I can be honest and where I can be real. A number of years ago, a guy by the name of Nate Larkin, Blass and I are going to see Nate this weekend. We're headed, Blass is here tonight, and we are headed down to Santa Fe, New Mexico for a conference this weekend. And Nate Larkin will be there. But I heard Nate Larkin years ago, he made a statement that has stuck with me. He said, every morning when I get out of bed, I'm just as close to the ditch as the last time I acted out. I'm just learning how to keep the car between the guardrails better. And that statement really stood out to me. And I really connect and identify with that statement today. I went to meetings because I was forced to. I went to meetings because I was afraid I would relapse if I didn't. Today, I go to meetings because I want to, because that's where I find family. It's been years. When I get up in the morning, I'm not worried about whether I'm going to relapse today or not. That's the last thing on my mind. But I recognize, just like Nate told me several years ago, that ditch is still right there. Every morning when I get up, I get in the truck and I drive into my office in town. I've got about a 30-minute drive down the highway, down the interstate. And it's an interstate highway, but you know, there's a guardrail. And on the other side of that guardrail is a ditch. And if I don't stay focused on where I'm headed, on traffic, on things that are going on around me, it'd be real easy for me to drift over into that guardrail and end up in that ditch. And my recovery is very much the same way. My recovery will be a lifelong journey. It's not that I'm scared of relapse. It's not that I think I'm going to act out again or get in trouble again. But I know that ditch is there. It's still there. And if I don't maintain the disciplines and the tools and the things that I have learned that have helped me to grow, I'll start to drift towards that ditch again. And so that idea that recovery ends when the behavior stops is false myth number 2. Recovery is a lifelong journey. Fear of relapse, that's not lifelong. It doesn't have to be. But recovery will always be a part of my life. Myth number 3, recovery means constant happiness. Have you ever thought that? Has that ever been something that you thought is what recovery was going to mean? Recovery, man, when I experience recovery, life is just going to be perfect and I'm never going to struggle again. I'm never going to feel bad again. Everything's going to be great. It's a myth. It's a myth. Recovery means authentic living. Recovery means feeling joy, feeling sadness, feeling anger, feeling fear. But again, those feelings are gifts given to us by God. And if we're able to press into them and process them, then they have gifts that are available to make our life better. Feeling joy, sadness, anger, but not being ruled by them. not being controlled by them, not being terrified by them anymore. That's recovery. That's recovery. So, again, next question. Which one of these myths, if any, which one of these myths have you believed? And what has helped you to see recovery differently? Which of these myths have you believed? And what has helped you to see recovery differently? You know, I used to think that in order for life to be good, I always had to be happy. One of the things that I've learned is that emotions don't work like that. We can experience multiple emotions all at the same time, and sometimes those emotions are totally opposite. You know, I shared with you earlier that I went to prison for 2 years while my daughters were still young. My oldest daughter was a freshman in college when I went off to prison, and I'd been a pastor. I'd been in the ministry for over 20 years, got myself in trouble, went to prison for 2 years. But my daughter, my oldest daughter, had always growing up, I had 4 daughters. And so one memory, man, as far back as I can remember, as soon as the girls were able to walk, they started rehearsing their wedding days. Even little bitty, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they'd pick dandelions or daisies, and I'd see them marching across the front yard, rehearsing wedding. And my oldest daughter had always told me, because I was a pastor, she said, when I get married, I want you to perform the wedding. I want you to perform the wedding. And then I got in trouble and went to prison, lost my credentials. And here several years back, my daughter got engaged. And we had reconnected. We have an excellent relationship now. With me being in recovery and in the years since I've been out of prison, we're very close. And she came to me when she got engaged, and I could tell she was feeling kind of sad. And she said, Dad, she said, I'm engaged and I'm kind of disappointed. I'd always wanted you to perform my wedding, and you're not a pastor anymore. And so I'll tell you, it was important for me to make that happen for her. And I was able to find a place where I could get credentials and perform her wedding. Where I'm going with this is this. with emotions, we feel multiple emotions. Some are painful, some are good, but they're a part of life. When I was performing that wedding, I'm standing there at the front of the church. Man, I love my daughter. And I'm proud of her. I'm proud of the woman she's become. And as the ceremony is starting, the music's starting, and the doors swing open, and here she comes down the aisle. Her stepfather was walking her down the aisle, and I'm going to be performing the wedding. And when I saw those doors swing open and she headed towards me, I was hit with feelings that were totally contradictory. And both were almost overwhelming. I was flooded with joy and pride. Here she was getting married, such a success. I'm so proud of her. And this is what she's been wanting since she was a little girl, marching with her sisters across the front yard. And it's taking place. And at the same time, there's a young man standing next to me. And it hit me that, you know what? I'm not going to be the person that she calls first when she has needs anymore. When the car breaks down or it has a flat tire, when she needs help moving something or needs something hauled, I'm not going to be that go-to person. I'm still going to be there, but I'm not going to be that first call. That was a pretty depressing feeling. I was overwhelmed with joy and sadness all at the same time. But I was able to process that. Hey, Mark, it's good to see you, man. Mark is a new grandpa. He's going to be a great grandpa too. And but I remember seeing that and being overwhelmed with those feelings all at the same time. But they didn't force me to run back to my addiction. I was able to step into those and experience those and find peace and contentment in the presence of those feelings and emotions. All right, we're coming down towards the end here. So what keeps recovery real and sustainable? I've got a few simple tools that I want to share with you, and that I share with my coaching clients that have been really important to me in my recovery. They help keep me between those guardrails. Here are 4 of them that I use and that I recommend to all my clients. First of all, I'm a big believer in a daily check-in. For years now, I have had a community, been either a part of a specific group or a part of a community where I practice a daily check-in. And I use 4 questions for that check-in. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I doing? And what am I thinking about doing? And all 4 of those questions, there's a purpose behind those. What am I feeling? That is a part of that process of learning to understand what I'm feeling, not running from my emotions anymore, but being able to process my emotions and identify those. What have I been feeling today? What am I thinking about today? What's been on my mind? What has been my focus? What have I been doing? That's an important question because there are always patterns behind our behaviors. And so it may be, as I do these daily check-ins, that I begin to notice patterns. You know, I was around Joe again today. And when I'm around Joe, I tend to struggle more. And I begin to recognize triggers as I begin to recognize things like that, places that I go, things that I'm doing. I begin to recognize patterns. And then what am I thinking about doing? That's an important question. I don't know if any of you that are here live or will be here watching the replay, maybe some of you struggle with alcohol. There was a study a number of years ago, and the study has been repeated and expanded into other areas, but the first study was done specifically on alcohol. And in this study, what they found is that if an alcoholic is going to relapse, the day of the week that an alcoholic is most likely to relapse is Sunday. And there's a specific time of the day on Sunday when they're more likely to relapse. It's Sunday evening. That's when the most relapses for alcoholics takes place, Sunday evenings. And through that study, they were able to identify some of the main factors in that. And what they found is that for a lot of people on Sunday afternoon, we start thinking about going back to work on Monday. And a lot of us don't like our jobs. Or we may like our job, but we don't like some of the people we work with, or we don't like our boss, or there's a an activity or something coming up at work that we're not excited about. And we begin on Sunday afternoon to think about going back to work on Monday. And we begin to struggle with that. And thus, most relapse with alcohol takes place on Sunday evenings. Now, studies have also found that that's a frequent time for relapse in other areas too. In fact, several people I know that struggle with sex addiction and pornography issues have shared that Sunday is their most likely time for relapse. And it's for the same reason. I start thinking about work and I start getting stressed out. So daily check-ins. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I doing? And what am I thinking about doing? And begin to look for patterns to our behavior. A second tool that I use is meetings or community. I'm not saying everybody has to be plugged into a meeting. For me, being a meeting, I shared earlier, I was in a meeting last night. My home group is Monday evenings, and I am in that group. It's a joke there that if I live to be 100, one of the young punks in the group will be pushing me in a wheelchair. It's kind of a joke with the guys. But it's true. If I live to be 100, my intention is to be there. Not because I have to, not because anybody's making me, not because I'm afraid I'm going to relapse if I don't go. There were times when that's why I went, because somebody made me or because I was afraid of relapse. But for years now, I'm in that meeting because that's where I have community. That's where I have family. I have friends that will stand by me. I want to be with them. They want to be with me. And I don't have to worry about being judged or about being shamed. I have men that are going to walk with me with understanding and with care. So meetings are community. Third tool, journaling or prayer. Create space in your life for reflection. So many people that are in recovery, and even people that are not would say they're not in recovery, but they begin their day reading a devotional. My second daughter has struggled with addiction, and I believe she still does. I know for years she began her morning every day with readings from the big book or from a recovery book, and with a time of meditation and prayer. And that's a common thing. For me, mornings aren't the best time, and we don't have to do it in the morning. But I have a time every day with journaling and with prayer, reading or meditating on healthy material. And then the fourth tool that I'm a big believer in is movement and rest. There's a book, Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. There's a lot of meaning in that. But our body keeps score even in movement and rest. For me, an important part of my recovery has been walking. I get out and I walk, and I'm able to process things while I'm walking and moving. It's good for me. I mentioned that I developed diabetes in the midst of my addiction, and that movement and that walking helps to regulate my blood sugar. I'm able to process things better when I'm walking. A lot of times I walk with a friend or with people. I walk with clients. There are clients that know that I walk a lot, and my office is right next to a park with about a mile-long walking trail, and I have clients that have found that walking is extremely beneficial in helping them process things. And some clients, when the weather's nice, they'll shoot me a message 15 or 20 minutes before the appointment. Hey, can we walk today? And we do. We walk and we talk, and they're able to process things in a much better way. So movement, but also rest. One of the biggest triggers for most people in recovery is fatigue. We get tired and we move towards that substance of choice. And so, rest, having a regular sleep pattern. I encourage clients to shoot for 7 hours of sleep a day. Some people will argue with me, I just don't have time. Yeah, but you got time to be scrolling Facebook or playing a game on your phone. You've got time for other things. Prioritize rest and sleep. None of these tools that I've just listed, daily check-in, meeting or community, journaling or prayer, and movement or rest, none of these are fancy, but all of these tools work. It's because recovery isn't built on big moments. Recovery is built on small, consistent choices, decisions and choices that we make every day. Daily disciplines, if you'd like. And so, 4 tools. So today we have talked about 4 dimensions of recovery: physical recovery, emotional recovery, relational recovery, and spiritual recovery. All of these are important and are a part of living a healthy, solid, stable life. We've talked about myths of recovery. The myth that recovery is about willpower. It's not. Recovery is about healthy community. The myth that recovery ends when behavior stops. It's not true. Recovery is a lifelong process. That doesn't mean we live our entire life in fear of relapse or acting out again. We don't. But we keep up with those daily disciplines and those tools that have helped us find a state of recovery and are helping us to live a healthy life. And the myth that recovery means constant happiness. It's not true. Life is not always happy. We experience sadness. We experience fear. There are going to be times when we experience loneliness or loss or pain, but we also experience joy. And recovery is about being able to live an authentic life, feeling joy and sadness and anger, but not being ruled by our feelings and our emotions. And then 4 tools that we can use: a daily check-in, maybe, meetings or community, journaling or prayer, and movement or rest. So before we close tonight, I want to leave you with this thought. Recovery is not about becoming somebody new. Recovery is about remembering who you were created to be. All of us were created to be. We were created with a purpose in mind. Not about recovery is not about being somebody new. It's about remembering who you were created to be. It's not just about what you stop doing. It's about who you're becoming. And that's why we call it recovery. We're recovering our hearts, our stories, and our purpose. Take 5 minutes a day to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's one thing that I'm grateful for today? What's one small choice that aligns with the person that I want to be? Then write it down, even a few words. That can be your journaling for the day. Those simple questions and thoughts. What am I feeling right now? What's something that I'm grateful for today? And what's one small choice that aligns with the person that I want to be? So, last question, and we close things out. What's one truth about recovery that you're taking away from tonight's talk? I want you to think about that. And when you get a chance, throw it into the chat here. If you don't put it in here tonight, one day this week, come back to the replay and just throw into the chat what's a truth about recovery that you can take away from tonight's talk. Again, next week, just a reminder, Rob Shetler from Pastoral Care for You will be here, and we'll be talking about the spiritual aspect of recovery and how spirituality plays a role in our recovery. If this conversation today spoke to you, I want you to share it with somebody who needs hope today. You can follow my page, follow my account for weekly Let's Talk Recovery episodes. We're here every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Central. And then this video, a video of this will be on my Facebook page, which is where we're recording it for 30 days. But it will also be posted on my other platforms. Go to my website, rw-coaching.com. At the bottom of the home page are all my platforms. And this video will be posted on those and will be available. All right. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thanks for the comments, Blas and Mark, Opa, Grandpa, Opa. My grandkids call me Papa. Every once in a while to torment me, they call me Pappy. But I like that too. All right. Thanks for being with me tonight. And I hope to see all of you next week with my guest, Rob Shetler.